Okay, so this is my final project. This video might get a little bit long, but just bear with me. We're gonna go through the whole project. And if I stutter a lot, I'm sorry. I did not write a script for this video. Um, so let's start with the rooms class file. Here is where I defined all of the um variables for the array that I created right here for all the rooms. So basically, it shows where you go if you go up, down, left, right, down, right, up, left, and down, left. It'll also show the room name and the room description. And then I defined all of these variables here to make them shorter here. So if I go back to the the program file, then you can see all of these numbers, what room you end up in if you go in each direction, the name of the room, and its description, which got a little long on some of these, but it's fine. Yeah. Next up, we have a few other variables that I needed to define. So first we have a list right here that is the inventory, but we'll get to that later. So we have a integer that is the player position, which is set to 0 right now, but as we move throughout, it will change. Um, we have the input, which defines whenever the player puts in an input. The name, which is when the player puts in their name, which happens a lot later. Um, some booleans for when certain events run, and so these correlate to different events, and there's 10 of them. Found bones and found dagger, which are for the weapons. Now let's get into the main method. So when the game starts, it will show you this, which is basically a little title screen. Welcome to the Archivist. If you wish to quit at any time, please type quit. Press enter to continue. So while the input does not equal quit, and then basically the entire game is just in this while loop. Okay, here is where we define some things from other class files that I've created. So here we we call findings, which basically, if we go up here to findings, is a class file that I created for everything that you can find in certain rooms. So whenever I call it, it's just easier to put it all in here and then just call it later. Um, and then let's go back to program. And then we call rats, bats, and raccoons, which are the three child class files of attackers. So they're basically just enemies that you can encounter. And so when you go down here, all of these have a run loop. So basically, later when it comes time, I just call the run loop and it will play. Every time you enter a new room, the console will clear. So basically, it'll just clear everything that came before it and just make everything a little less cluttered. And once you enter a room, it will say you have reached, and then it will display the room name from the array up here. So right here, it will display the lobby, the front desk, the name. And then after that, it will display, nope, that's down here, it will display the room description, which is this part right after. It's the really long part. It will display the description of the room. And then we start our if statements. I have created an if statement for every single room. So player position is 0. If player position is 1, 2, 3, it goes all the way to 17. So if player position is 0, then we add another while loop. If the input does not equal yes, no, or quit, or an and has run, has not happened, then this will run. So basically, it'll ask you if you want to sit on the bench. You can say yes or no. If you say yes, you sit on the bench. It is not comfortable in the slightest. Do you wish to stay longer? And to that, you can also say yes or no. And if you say yes both times, then has run. This is a different has run, but it will say true, and that is used later. But once this entire thing runs, blah blah blah, it will say has run 0 equals true. So when you come back to the room, it will not run again. Oops. So let's move on to the second room, which is room 1. So if player position equals room 1, and I didn't mention this in the last one, but the exclamation point means that has run 1 is false, meaning that it has not run. Um, so if the player position equals 1 and has run 1 is false, then this code will run. And so console write line, it runs right here in findings. It'll run the finding for skeleton, which is right here. So it's when you find these old skeleton bones, which is also a weapon. Um, oops, wrong one. And then found bones will equal true, which we'll get to that later. And then the same thing happens for flashlight, but instead of found bones, because it's not a weapon, instead of it being a boolean, we add it to our inventory, flashlight. And then has run 1 equals true. So the next time you enter this room, this code will not run. So let's move on to the next room. If player position equals 2, you have encountered a rat, and then rat.run. So this is where we call our function to run the battle sequence. So rat is basically for rats, which is the child class of the attacker's parent class. So here we have basically this whole thing shows that whichever item, whichever weapon, that's the word, weapon, you have in your inventory, basically. Um, if you have found that weapon, your max attack damage will change. So if you have nothing, it will be 15. If you have found the bones, the arm bones, then it will be 25. And if you have found the dagger, your max attack will be 35. And so basically, how we implement this into the battle sequence, if we go up to rats, um, so the integer AD is attack damage. We set that equal to 0. That's important. So for bite damage, which is the rat's attack, the attacker HP. The rat's HP is 55, and the max damage, the max bite that the rat can do is 5. And so basically, bite damage is how much the rat attacks for. And so basically it will choose a random number between 1 and the max bite, which is 5. But the top number is not included, so it'll basically be any number between 1 and 4. Um, and so, yeah, so that's that. And then we move down to attack damage, which is the player's attack damage. So, how we implement the different weapons. If the player, let's start down here. If the player has not found any weapons, it's just your hands, basically. Um, sorry. Your max attack is 15, and so it will the computer will basically choose a random number between 10 and your max attack, which is 15. And then if the player has found the arm bones, if found bones equals true, then your max attack changes to 25. It will choose a random number between 15 and your max attack, which is 25, just to make that range a little smaller, to make it, easier a bit. And then if the player has found the dagger, if found dagger equals true, then the max attack will be 35, and then the computer will choose a random number between 25 and 35. All right, on to the next room. So if player position equals 3 and has run 2 is false, then so here, right here, is where we call the function for page 1, which is basically here, right here. You find a handwritten page amongst the scattered torn books. It reads, day 89, and then blah, blah, blah. You decide to take the page with you. So then it will run that, and then you have found a page, and then it will add the page into your inventory, which becomes important later. And then has run 2 now equals true, so next time you enter this room, this will not play. So the next few rooms have pretty much the same concept as room 3 and room 2. Um, so if player position equals 4 and has run 3 is false, it will run and you find another page and it adds it to your inventory. It has run 3 equals true. Same thing happens here, except it's not a page, it's a folder. Inventory add folder, has run 4 equals true. Coffee, you found a coffee, add it to your inventory, has run 5 equals true. And then here are 2 more battle sequences, a bat and a raccoon, which are different. And then we get to room 8, which is another bench. So you have a chance to sit on another bench. And it basically just runs the same sequence from the first room. It runs the same sequence. Oh, I forgot to add earlier, if you put quit, it will go to the credits, which is all the way down at the bottom. Let's scroll down there really quick. Whee! It's oops. Um, right here, it will basically go to here, and it will play this sequence. So we get a few more battle sequences, and you find a few more things. You have encountered a bat. Then we have a battle sequence here. This room is where you find the dagger, and so then it will change your max attack damage if you go back up, or if you go here and you encounter a raccoon and you have another battle sequence. And then 12, and then 13, you find a skull. And then 14, 15, 16, and 17, this is where the real meat of the game is. So, this is the real meat of the game. I already said that. This is room 17. This is where you meet the only other character in the game, Gordon. So, if player position equals 17, it will run this. Well, first it will run the name of the room and the description, and then it will run this right here. You try to quietly escape the room or exit the room, but the floor creaks as you step. Basically, you see the man, and then we have a while loop. While input does not equal 1, or 2, or quit, um, then basically all of this will run. You have a choice to ask him either what is your name or why are you here by yourself. Um, no matter what you choose, you will get the answers to both. So if you choose what is your name, basically he doesn't answer for a long time. You wait patiently. He says his name is Gordon, and then name equals console read line. So basically, then you once whatever you enter is will be input into name, and so when we call name again, like right here, then it will say whatever you entered. So name, huh? That's a nice name. So what are you doing here? Name. And then you have a choice between either just exploring what I thought was an abandoned building or none of your business. And so he will say you can choose, and he will do either of these. And then if you input quit, it will go to the credits. If you input one, or sorry, um, if you input anything other than 1, 2, or quit, it will say please choose a number listed. Um, and then after this runs, then it will say after you ask him what is your name, then basically this entire thing will run. And if you have found the skull, this is where the inventory comes in. If you have found the skull, then he will say this. Then this will run. If you have not found the skull, then this will just be skipped over. Um, and then he tries to change the subject, and then we skip over this, and then we go down here. This is the same thing in input 2. But if you go down here, blah, 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 then it will skip all the way down here. Let's go through input 2 first. If your input equals 2, it will basically be the same thing. It's just switched around. It switches, basically this will be first and the name part will be second. But then if we go down here, once that whole thing is done, then we go to it'll skip to page. If you have the page, if you have one of the pages but not the other, Gordon will say, I see you found a page of my journals. There's another one missing as well. I guess you didn't catch it. But if you have both pages, then Gordon will say, oh, you found my journal pages. I've been looking for those. Thank you. And if you don't have either of them, it will just skip over this. The next thing is the folder. If you found the folder, then you remember the folder you picked up from the study rooms. Gordon might know something about it. And then it'll ask you if you want to tell him, and then you basically input yes or no, or quit. And if you say yes, you show him the folder of the strange drawings, and he tells you that it was a habit of his. He sleepwalked, or sleptwalked. That doesn't matter. um, and if you say no, then it basically just doesn't do anything. And then if you don't input yes or no or quit, it'll say it's a yes or no question. And then if you haven't found the folder, it will also again just skip over this. Next is coffee. It'll ask you if you want to offer him your coffee. Yes, no. If you didn't find the coffee, then it'll skip over this. And then we get here. There is a prolonged period of complete silence save for the incessant buzzing of the fluorescent lights above. Finally, Gordon speaks. So, then, if you sat on the bench, so if has run 9 and 10 is when you sit on the bench. So if either of these has these two lines mean or, so if this has run or this has run, it can be either or it can be both. Either way, it works. You think about when you sat on the bench. Do you tell him what happened? And then you can tell him yes or no. Either way, you can tell him yes, and then basically all of this will run. Or you can tell him no, and basically the same thing will happen, except it's just a little different. But if so, let's say we say yes. So you tell him what happened on the bench. That is quite troubling. He tells you basically that he wants you to leave. Because it's not safe. And you can choose what about you or okay, I'll leave. If you say what about you, he says I'll be fine, and then you can say okay, I'll leave, or what if you come with me? If you say okay, I'll leave, then you basically leave, and then it goes to the credits, which is basically the end of the game. Um, if you say what if you come with me, then he comes with you, and then it's the end of the game. And that basically just repeats. It keeps repeating here, and then yeah, that's that's the game. Quickly, just wanted to address one little mistake that I made. Right here, it was nice meeting you. Right here, if you sit on the bench and you basically tell them, you say, okay, you say, what about you? But then you say, okay, I'll leave. Or no, if you say, okay, I'll leave first. Then right here it plays this, but I forgot to add that this is where this is another path where the game ends. I forgot to add go to credits, so just wanted to make sure that I said that I added that. One more thing that I completely forgot to add is how the player moves. Um, player move basically right here. Every time you exit, basically all of this, the original like loop and everything. Once you enter, exit, it will show player move. And so and player move, come down here. It will display type up, down, left, right, up, right, down, right, up, left, and down, left to move. Type quit to exit the game. So if input equals up, then the room in the array, if up is greater than or equal to 0, then the player will move up in the direction. So if we go up here, the player will move right here is up. So the player will move to that room, will move to the number of the room. That's where the player will move. And if it is not, if the number is not greater than or equal to 0, if it is -1, which is the number that I chose. Um, so if the if the number does not equal or is not greater than or equal to 0, then you have run into a wall. Nice going. And then it'll basically press enter to continue, and it'll loop back up here. and tell you to try again, basically. The same thing happens with down. If greater than or equal to 0, then they'll move down to the number that is down. And that just keeps happening: left, right, up, right, up, left, down, left. If the player if the player input, equals quit, then it will basically, oh yeah, it clears the console real quick, and then it, thank you for playing. It'll basically, basically the credits copied here, and then if input equals does not equal quit, but it also doesn't equal any of these either, you must choose a direction to travel, and then press enter to continue, and it will go back up and say type up, down, left, right, yeah, and it'll just loop back through until you enter a valid response. Yeah. One more teensy weensy little mistake. Down here, if you, at the question, if you tell him, if you did sit on the bench, if you tell him, if you decide not to tell him, it should, basically this entire sequence should play, but I forgot to copy and paste it, in here. So, I just did that right after you do not tell him what happened. You are afraid he will think you are crazy. And right after that happens, I just copy and pasted this whole sequence. I'm sure there's an easier way to do it, like making a class file for it. But this is the way I did it. So